Senator Rand Paul joins us, Republican of Kentucky. He's been all over the place right now. He's a man of the hour in many ways. Pressure is being applied, but Senator Paul, you've been through this before. What do we not know about this big, beautiful bill that you do?
Well, I would call it the big, not yet beautiful. You know, could be made prettier. Could do a little touch up to make it more acceptable. There's much about it I like. I mean, I like the tax cuts. I voted for the tax cuts in 2017. I'd like to make them permanent. I agree with Art Laffer that you can reduce tax rates and actually have more revenue. So I don't accept the CBO argument that the tax cuts will add to the debt. I am for spending cuts. I don't think there's sufficient spending cuts in there. But I will work to try to put more spending cuts in there, and I could vote for it if we get more spending cuts in there. But the one thing I can't support is the third part of the bill. That's increasing the debt ceiling $5 trillion. Because I think that is like drunken teenagers that run up. You give your 16-year-old a credit card. A month later, they've got $2,000 worth of debt. They've been buying booze and gambling and acting irresponsibly. Do you give them now a credit card that has a $10,000 debt limit, or do you restrict their debt limit? So I think we should put rules and strictures, try to control the spending of Congress by maybe increasing the debt ceiling for a few months, and then see if they can act in appropriate adult fashion to control spending, and then we have the discussion again every 3 months. But what they're wanting to do is raise it $5 trillion. And one thing we know from past history, if you raise it $5 trillion, they will borrow $5 trillion. So it really doesn't become any kind of leash if that's what we give them.
Is this applicable? Liz Warren came out, Elizabeth Warren. She wants to get rid of the debt ceiling. President Trump agrees with her. Is this applicable, and would it appease you, or am I misinterpreting the fundamentals of the debt ceiling, what it is?
Well, it's sort of the opposite of what I want. They don't ever want to vote on the debt ceiling, and I want to vote on it every 3 months. So it's two polar opposites. If you never voted on it, there would be no leverage to tell the people borrowing and spending the money they're doing a bad job. It's an inflection point. It's a point of leverage. It's a point of time for debate. So in the past, under Biden, he would ask that we extend the debt ceiling for 2 years with no dollar amount, and we could spend and borrow as much as they felt like they wanted to spend and borrow with no limit for 2 years. $5 trillion is essentially limitless, because I'm not sure they can borrow more than $5 trillion. They might be able to, but it is the same thing. No restrictions on your spending. So it's the opposite thing to do. And in the past, no conservative Republican has ever voted to raise the debt ceiling. In fact, this debt ceiling is such immense proportion that it will be the largest increase in debt ceiling in our history, and it's frankly just not conservative.
Are you close to getting what you want? I mean, is there, are you guys negotiating? Are you getting a little bit like, is this going to happen, or are you a hard no matter what?
It takes 4 of us. If 4 of us could say we're not going to vote to have the debt ceiling on this bill, and we want a separate vote, they will separate it. That's the only way it happens. I'm the only one that's absolutely saying that now. But you've heard more from Ron Johnson on the spending, that spending needs to go back to pre-pandemic levels. I completely agree. We should, not be spending at this alarming elevated rate that we've been doing ever since the pandemic came. And so there are the two sort of wants and asks that we have. We want lower spending levels, and we'd like to get rid of the debt ceiling. If 4 of us would say so, we'd get it. The question is whether or not there are 4 people with resolve that would stand up and demand it, because then that's the only way they get the bill passed. And yes, I'll vote for it. I'll vote to make the tax cuts permanent. I was for them before. I'm still for them. I will vote for spending cuts. Do they have to be perfect? Do they have to be every spending cut I want? No. I'm willing to tolerate whatever the majority can get to, or whatever every Republican can get to. But I'm just not voting to raise the debt ceiling $5 trillion, because at that point, Republicans own the debt. We've always historically blamed the Democrats for big spending and deficit spending, and it was true. It was a Democrat problem. But once Republicans vote for this, realize the deficit this year is going to be over $2 trillion. And if you raise the debt ceiling $5 trillion, it means you're going to be well over $2 trillion next year, too. That isn't conservative, but then who's left? If I were to vote for this, who is left on any high moral ground to call out the deficit spenders and the big spenders?
Are you suspicious at all of Lindsey Graham going over to Ukraine, I think just before the drone attack, which officially we did not know about, was in the works? I'm hearing the intelligence community did know about it, but maybe they didn't tell the executive branch, the president for whom they worked, or though that could be. What are your thoughts on Graham, that visit, and how this impacts the bill?
There's a lot going on that's making peace more difficult to get to. I am sympathetic to President Trump and also very supportive of his foreign policy. He's talked about trying to end the war, but escalating the war doesn't bring us any closer. Lindsey Graham is also offering a new sanctions bill that has worldwide sanctions. So what Lindsey Graham is offering is if you buy oil or gas from Russia, you'll get a 500% tariff that can be doubled in 90 days. A 500% tariff becomes an embargo. So, you know, President Trump originally had a 140% tariff on China, and everybody said that would end Chinese trade. He went down to 30 because the markets became rattled at ending the trade precipitously. A 500% tariff on China would end all trade with China, but guess what? India buys Russia's oil. Do we want to have a 500% tariff on India that would end all trade with India? Turkey trades with Russia. Do we want to end all trade with Turkey? Most of the members of the European Union trade with Russia. Do we want to end all trade with the European Union? It would be the largest worldwide disaster in the history of our country, greater than any tariff war we've ever had. It's the most ill-conceived bill I have ever seen in Congress, and yet it has 80 co-sponsors now because most of them think it's a Russian sanctions bill and don't realize that it's a worldwide embargo if the countries don't kowtow to what we tell them to do.
If you don't mind, quickly, you were actually terrific when questioning Ron Rowe and the FBI about what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania. You were aghast by some of the failures, as so many of us were, and this thing has kind of been brushed under the carpet, it seems like to me. And you were talking about accountability, and there hasn't really been any. I'm hearing that there may be some developments. There is a lot of stuff in these reports that have gone underreported, but what's next in the July 13th Butler probe, and the West Palm Beach for that matter?
The most important thing that we discovered in investigating this is that, thank God, they finally allowed the counter snipers to be in Butler. That was the first time they allowed President Trump to have counter snipers. For 6 months, his Secret Service team, as well as his campaign team, had been asking for counter snipers. Counter snipers are the people who were up on roofs with long guns to take out a sniper. So when that sniper raised up the first time, almost killed the president, did kill a gentleman behind him, and severely wounded other people, he was popping his head up to do another round of bullets, and there's a very good chance the president would have died that day, except for there was a Secret Service counter sniper that took him out with one single shot on the second go-around. That had been denied to President Trump for 6 months. And that was one of the crazy things, is that we also think that there could have been political motivation. We don't have proof of that. And the Secret Service still refuses to name names. They say some people have been disciplined, but they haven't told us whom. Yeah. We do know the head of the agency left under a cloud. We do know that the new head of the Secret Service is someone Donald Trump trusts that was from his own detail team. Those are all good things. But a lot went wrong that never should have got wrong. And all we can say is we are very, very lucky and thankful that the president wasn't assassinated. One
thing about the counter snipers, yes, that was the first occasion that they deployed the counter snipers. There was no counter surveillance unit, however. And the culture was such that you couldn't even add counter snipers without a counter surveillance unit. My understanding is it almost makes no sense. It's just you need a counter surveillance unit with the counter snipers. And yeah, they took out the shooter. How about that? You know, I mean, it reminds me a little bit of Dallas. I'm sorry, you know, and
there was also no one in charge. So you would think that afternoon, several hours before the event, someone would walk around and say, hey, there's a low-lying roof 50 yards from the stage. Someone could lay up there with a gun. No one noticed it because no one was in charge. Afterwards, no one took responsibility. And there was a window of time of at least 3 or 4 minutes, and really 45 minutes, when they could have taken the president off the stage and no one had the wherewithal. Even when people were shouting, man on a roof, gun, the crowd was shouting that, no one took the president off the stage. They had about a 3-minute window, and because their communications was so screwed up, but whoever's in charge shouldn't do this again because they showed utter incompetence.
Well, I think it's beyond that, really. The Senate work was excellent, the report. A lot of people didn't read it, but I think we need a whole commission because there's so many unanswered questions and so many questions that actually haven't been asked. I again commend you, though, for your service and what you did in the fallout from Butler. Thank you very much, Senator Rand Paul, who happens to be an eye doctor, an ophthalmologist. That is incredibly impressive. You can operate on an eyeball. The most fascinating organ, isn't it?
Absolutely, without question. Thanks for having me.
And you can go in there and make it right. Thank you very much, Senator. We'll see you again, and we'll be right back.